What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video on my rally build. So, I thought I was done for the night. I finished the video up and I decided to go back to work. So we're going to try to come up with, at least roughly tonight, a way that we can protect the fuel tank. That is the last thing that I need to take care of in order to pass scrutineering for American Rally Association rallies. And as you all know, we got STPR coming up in about a month and a half, which actually, when this video is airing, it's probably in like 3 weeks. Because I'm so far behind. But they have been coming at a regular schedule, so if you're interested in the build, you should definitely subscribe. Make sure you like the video, dislike it, let me know what you think. The likes and dislikes definitely help. Let me figure out what I need to do for the videos. Anyway, I'll stop rambling in the beginning. I gotta go grab that sheet and kind of figure out exactly how we're gonna do this. So, this is the stuff that I'm going to be using to protect the fuel tank. Now, this is 1/8 inch thick UHMW, something like that. It's pretty much plastic. It is 1/8 of an inch, so it is flexible, which is kind of good. I probably should have gone a little bit thicker for it, but I can always redo it if I see that it's not holding up well to it, because the way that I'm going to be mounting it is pretty generic, and I can just get another sheet, cut it to fit, and then throw some bolts in and mount it again. So I have 2 sheets here. They are 2 foot by 4 foot, and they're pretty much going to go underneath the car, and sounds ghetto, but zip tied to the lateral links in the rear. And then farther up near the car, I'm going to put some weld nuts on the floor of the car, and as well as I think the diff cradle, a couple of good places that I can get some solid welds on, and then drill some holes in this. That's going to hold it on. Zip ties are going to allow it to move a little bit with the lateral links as the suspension compresses and decompresses as well. And yeah, it sounds ghetto, but looking at a lot of cars, that's actually how a lot of rally cars do it. And this is going to provide protection for quite a bit of the underside, as well as suspension components, brake lines, all that kind of stuff up in the wheel well, as well as the fuel tank. So it will suffice for the roll to protect the fuel tank. If need to, I can add a little piece in between, kind of like where the exhaust is, to protect the fuel tank a little bit more in the center if these aren't close enough and it leaves some of it exposed. But we'll see as we get closer to actually mounting it what it looks like and what we need to do. I don't think that they need to be this long. I might leave them this long though, that way they can protect more of the underside of the car. Eventually I would love to put weld nuts everywhere on the car and completely line the bottom of the car with, probably not this size, I'll probably go thicker, with at least like a 1/4 inch or 3/16 of an inch or something like that. So that way it doesn't have to be changed out as often, but it'll definitely help the car last longer as far as like gravel spray. That is, anyway, if I don't roll the car or wreck it some other way. It'll take a while for the corrosion to take effect, whereas I could just crash it and ruin it in this month and a half, but I won't, I promise. I think tonight though, I don't have much time to work on it, and I know I need to get inside and spend some time with my wife, because I've been out here for a while, but we're going to at least figure out how we're going to mount it tonight, and then come back out in the morning and knock it out, weld up some weld nuts, and zip tie it to the lateral links, and it should be good. So essentially, it's going to go somewhat like this. I'm going to notch it around, kind of clear some of the diff area as well. But it's going to be zip tied, like I said, to the lateral links, kind of like that. So that way it'll be able to move, and I'll leave like a little bit of gap. That way it's not going to rip off as the suspension kind of compresses and comes up and down. And then weld nuts near the middle of the car, as well as in the center. And it should provide a lot more protection for the car. So pretty much, I think I need to mock up exactly where I need to trim that piece, and then once I do that, trim it all up, and then weld some stuff up here, and then we should be able to mount it up. Shouldn't be too hard though, to actually get it done. I'm definitely going to add a lot more protection to the underside of the car, and it'll be good. Should protect my brake lines a lot better, as well as all the suspension components, so it's always a plus. Hopefully one less thing to go wrong, or at least help with one less thing to go wrong with future rallies. I'm down here, might as well talk about it. I am going to be making some new lateral links for this thing. probably tomorrow on Saturday once I finish this. Shouldn't be too much to do. I'm literally just taking 1-inch DOM and I'm welding in some spherical heim joints, or spherical bushings, heim joints, whatever you want to call them, rod ends. They got a few different names, and then they're going to be adjustable. Then we're going to get rid of this rear sway bar because we're going to be running sway barless. Give that a shot, see if I like it. If not, then we'll weld a mount onto the lateral link. That way we can go back to having end links on there and throw the sway bars on there, but I'm sure it'll be fine without sway bars and I'll eventually get used to it. One of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do that though is I keep having toe slippage with these things, so it'd be nice to just set toe with a bar that's not going to slip like a camber bolt does, like these eccentric bolts in the rear do, as well as get rid of these bushings, because these bushings are pretty garbage and you get a lot of like passive rear wheel steer when you're taking hard corners. It's a lot harder to break the rear end loose because of that, and that's kind of how Subaru designed it to kind of help turns, but it's not necessarily good for a race car or rally car or anything like that. All right, I'm done for the night. I'll be back in the morning, and then we'll pick up and we'll start trimming those and get them mounted up really quick. So I'm gonna try to knock this out pretty quick. So far this morning, I have been welding for a while, trying to get some of my technique down for those lateral links that I'm gonna be making later today in another video though, so you don't have to worry about that, but make sure you subscribe so you can see that video next week, which I talked about last night, but I forgot that. So anyway, we're gonna try to knock these out really quick. So I'm going to literally just get under the car, start kind of like rough making a mark with a Sharpie of where I need to trim, start taking my jigsaw to it and slowly trim away until I get 2 custom pieces made that fit perfectly. Once I get those mocked up and cut up, then we'll figure out exactly where we need to put weld nuts, grind away the rust and undercoating that we need to so we can actually get some good welds in there, weld the weld nuts on, and then that's pretty much it. So in a nutshell, we'll talk a little bit more about it as I'm going, but roughly that's what I'll be doing. So I just finished mocking them up and trimming them pretty much as best I can. I think that they're pretty good right now and that they'll fit really well, but they might be a little bit more trimming once I actually get the weld nuts in and they are actually where they're gonna go. So next step, you guys saw me mark for where I'm gonna put the weld nuts. It looks like I can get away with just doing 4. There's a couple other spots on the car that I can pick up existing bolts and nuts that are already going to the car. One going to like the diff skid plate that I've got. Both of them are going to connect into the rear of that. That'll be pretty easy to just pull those bolts out once I put the holes in there and just bolt that up with that. And then there's another one farther forward, like on the cradle, that'll be able to pick up a bolt going through the protection plate, and then just those weld nuts, and then the rest will be getting zip tied to the trailing arms in 2 spots on both sides, as well as the lateral links in the rear once I redo those lateral links. So it will be able to move up and down with the suspension as it compresses and rebounds, so that way we don't have to worry about it like somehow binding and then ripping the bolts out if we take a jump or something. And the suspension reaches full droop, so that way it actually moves with it. So that should be good. Hopefully last a little while. Yeah. So yeah, the next step is going to be actually cleaning up those areas that I marked for the weld nuts, welding on the floor. I probably will have to replace the bolts and the skid plate protection eventually with this, depending on how rough the rallies are. but hopefully as long as I weld those on sufficiently, there's not going to be any issue with those getting ripped off, and then I can just unbolt the bolt and then throw a new one in once the hex head actually starts getting worn off. So that's the next step. I'm going to grab the angle grinder, start cleaning those up, and then we'll weld some nuts on there. So I changed my mind a little bit, as you saw me do. I drilled holes through the floor pan because there just didn't seem like there was enough meat to really weld if I was welding on the other side, because these floor pans are so thin, it's probably just going to rip off anyway. Should be a little bit stronger and last longer because the weld nut will be on the inside rather than the outside, so it shouldn't get ruined. And if for some reason the bolt gets stripped out completely, I can get at it from this side to weld like a nut to it or something and try to back it out that way, or just unscrew it the other way and cut off the hex head. So I think this is a lot better. It'll just kind of be a pain to weld in between the seats because I'm not removing these seats, they take so long to put in. So yeah, I'm just going to clean up the paint in here now, and then we'll weld these nuts in. I am going to hit the bottom side once I weld these on with some paint to kind of fix where I removed all of the undercoating. That way it doesn't rust and cause a huge hole, because then these won't last anyway. Alright, we got these things welded in now. Not the easiest things to get at, especially that side, just because it's so tight, because that seat is pushed almost all the way back. These weren't too bad. Now, I didn't fully weld these things up because really all they're doing is like they need to be held with the weld so that you can throw the bolt in from the other side. So there's like a little bit more than a tack with good penetration holding them in, because I really didn't want to burn through. I burned through in one spot because I accidentally hit the sheet metal instead of starting on the weld nut, and it kind of blew a big hole in there. So yeah, it's kind of annoying. So we didn't do that on this side. We just did like 3 or 4 really good tacks, and they're super solid in there. So next step, I think I'm going to make the holes into the plastic pieces that are going to take the bolts that are holding on the diff skid plate. Those are the only ones that really matter. Once I get those bolted up, I'm going to mock everything else up, kind of hold it in place, and then drill the 4 holes, or 2 in each of the little protection pieces. And once we do that, we should be able to bolt it on. I probably won't go any further than that, because there won't be much more to do to get those things fully mounted other than zip tying them. So I might drill the holes for the zip ties to go through, but other than that, I don't think I'm going to actually zip tie them, because I'm just going to have to cut them off anyway, because I'm pulling the lateral links off in about an hour, or whenever I'm done with this, probably 5 hours, because it's going to take longer than I thought, but hopefully not. So yeah, should go fairly quick. Just got to mock those holes up and then go from there. So they're essentially pretty much completely mounted. The only thing that obviously isn't are the zip ties holding it to the lateral links and the trailing arms. So I already drilled the holes for the zip ties on the trailing arms right there on both sides. I didn't do the ones for the lateral links yet because I just don't know where I'm going to put them yet. Probably somewhere around here, and it's just going to literally hold it up. And they might be kind of loose as well, so that it's not holding it super tight up against the lateral link up here. And we're not going to have this end link in the way either, because we're not going to be running a rear sway bar on the new lateral links, so that'll get a little bit more clearance. This one should be good. I'm probably going to cut a little section out for the exhaust, so it's not rubbing against it and holding it a little bit lower. because it doesn't need to be there anyway. The exhaust is nasty, so if it gets ruined, I'll just redo it because I did such a bad job on it anyway. And I can probably tuck it up quite a bit higher if I redo it, because I mean, it's a huge gap right here that I easily could have just rotated this piece up and came up right away rather than dropping lower and then coming up. It's dumb design. Should have thought about it a little bit more. I was kind of worried about some of these areas that are kind of touching the exhaust, but I read some posts and talked to some people, and they were saying that this stuff is pretty hardy, and it just kind of chars it a little bit and then it just stops. It doesn't really like bother it too much. There's really no risk of it melting or burning with the type of material that it is. But if we see any weird stuff, I'll just trim it around where it's close to the exhaust, like up there where the resonator is. I don't know if you can see it, but somewhere up there, it's pretty close to it, as well as a couple areas up here. I will show the finished product as soon as I'm done making the lateral links, so you'll get a sneak peek on what the lateral links will look like. So make sure that you come back next week to see how I made them. That way you can see how I decided to actually mount them to the lateral links, and like my zip ties that I used. Like I said, I have some pretty strong ones right now, and I might go get some even like thicker ones, but we'll see with how well those work. I honestly think it'll be fine, unless like I blast like a huge rock and it rips it or something, but in that case it's probably gonna hit the suspension anyway, and I'm gonna be more worried about something else that broke. So yeah, that would be kind of worse in that case. Then I shouldn't have to worry about just ripping the underside off, because it won't be that important at that moment anyway. So yeah, we'll come back whenever I finish those lateral links. Hopefully I'll get it done today. If not, I don't know. You guys will see it though. And there it is, finally mounted. So I say finally, but for you guys it was seamless, but it's been about 3 weeks. So yeah, like I said, zip ties holding it to the lateral links right there. Same thing over there, and then trailing arm, and then bolted in all the other spots that I already made the bolts for. So it's super secure right now. And yeah, it is touching the exhaust. I didn't really trim it. This stuff is like super resilient to heat, so it kind of just like chars a little bit, but whatever, not a big deal. But it's not going to burn. So it actually like stopped making any sort of smells or getting charred after like 5 minutes of driving around. It might change like if I drove it for a long time and it gets really hot, and if it does, this stuff can handle it, so it's not really a big deal. And that is the end of the video. Since I showed you guys how I mounted it completely, I got to get back to work, finish prepping this thing. It's my last night to work on it before STPR, so I got a lot of little things that I got to take care of it, because it's going in the trailer, and the trailer's getting prepped and packed and everything tomorrow. So we'll see you guys with whatever video I got coming out next, and until then, I got to get back to work. So many things to do.